Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, TV, streaming, all sorts of good things. And it's Monday. That means the goodness is opened up, and Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett is here. Robert, how you doing today, sir?
John, today is a great day. Today is the 90th birthday of the greatest Canadian kid of all, Mr. William Shatner.
Yes, it is. So
90 years old.
And a happy birthday to William Shatner. You know, it's funny about Shatner is that he will always, whenever you say the name William Shatner, forever and for always, the first thing we will think about, obviously, is Captain James T. Kirk. We'll think of him in Star Trek. But we often forget he went on to have an incredibly successful and prolific career after Star Trek. I mean, everybody knows the name T.J. Hooker. He got huge award nominations, multiple Emmys, at least Emmy nominations. He won Emmys and all that kind of stuff for, what was it, Boston Legal?
And The Practice.
And The Practice that he won for all of that. Like, he went on to win awards, continued to have success, all this kind of stuff. A truly remarkable career. And it's understandable that we all just think of Star Trek, but it's also kind of unfortunate that all we think about is Star Trek because he showed himself capable of so much more. And I just got to ask you, on his birthday, you are one of the few people in the world who actually got to direct William Shatner. You actually directed this man in
Yes.
your movie, of course, A Free Enterprise. What was he like as an actor to direct?
Oh, he was amazing. And I'll tell you something. For Free Enterprise, the only way it would have worked, when he does comedy, he tends to go pretty broad. And I watched a lot of his comedy before we made the movie. And I said to him, Bill, because everyone calls him Bill. I said, Bill, at any one moment in this movie, people have to wonder, are you insane or are you being totally serious? And that was my big directorial note to him. He goes, oh, Rob, I get that. I go, yeah, you got to kind of play it deadpan. And he did. And he took that under advisement. And I mean, watching that guy work was hilarious. He was hilarious. And I had so much fun working with him. It was truly one of the highlight moments of my entire life.
I got to imagine it was. So, and again, a happy birthday to the good Canadian kid, 90 years old, Mr. William Shatner. All right, guys, it is awesome to have you guys here today joining us. Here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to split it up into two halves, as we always do. The first half of the show, we're going to discuss some predetermined topics. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to go ahead and start taking your live comments and questions. Now, how to get a live comment or question on the show? It's easy. Just go down into the description of this video and you'll see a tip link. You can just simply click on that. Or you can enter it in manually at streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show if it's appropriate for the show. And of course, you'll be supporting the show at the same time. And all of us involved here at the John Campea Show, thank you guys very much for that support. Okay, guys, before we get into anything else, let's do a couple of off the tops, shall we? And the first thing we're going to talk about off the top is this. Rob, one of the more confusing things, and we've talked about this already to a degree, but one of the most confusing things and one of the most confounding decisions I've seen made in a long time, as far as, television executives go and things like that, is when the Batwoman series on CW, and full disclosure, I wasn't a big fan. I'm not a big fan of the Batwoman series. I gave it a shot. Wasn't for me. Didn't hate it. It just wasn't for me. No big deal. But they made a big deal when they cast Ruby Rose. She was going to be in it. I actually didn't think she was bad in the role, all that kind of stuff. Well, of course, in the off season, Ruby Rose and CW part ways. Now, whoever you want to blame for that, it depends on who you listen to. But the bottom line is Ruby Rose and CW decided to part ways. It then was a confounding decision to me that instead of just recasting the role, because you've already established the character, they went ahead and swapped out the character and said now a totally different character. Instead of Kate, it's going to be a completely different character is going to play Batwoman. So they got a new actress and a new character, something that I thought was just an incredibly stupid decision on their part to do. And their ratings have not been fabulous and all that kind of stuff. Well, now they have recast Ruby Rose's Kate character. They've now recast, and they went out and got a really good actress. I've only seen her in a few things, but I've really liked what I've seen her in. Wallis Day as the new Kate Kane. So she is back. She is the new Kate Kane. This is what they write over at Deadline. Now, don't be mistaken. She's not about to be Batwoman again. All right. So on Sunday night, Batwoman answered the lingering questions of whatever happened to Kate Kane. Since Javicia Leslie, I've always said Javica, but I believe it's Javicia Leslie, donned the cape and cowl as Batwoman, a.k.a. Ryan Wilder, Kate's whereabouts have remained a loose end, but the mystery was solved tonight as Wallis Day will step into the role that was once played by Ruby Rose. Don't get it twisted, Leslie will continue to be Batwoman. In fact, the reintroduction of Kate Kane further solidifies Leslie's place as the one and only Batwoman, and we must reiterate that she is the first black actress to step into the role of the iconic superhero. So they went out and they decided to get her in. They needed to do this. From a narrative point of view, they needed to do this because you have to have some closure. Like, you can't just leave this big lingering question, whatever happened to the character? This character that we followed for an entire season as Batwoman is now suddenly gone. So they needed to touch on this and whatever. Rob, I'll tell you what, I like this girl. She was like the betrothed to Sig-El in Krypton. And I really liked Krypton. Like, I didn't fall over myself in love with Krypton, but I really did like that show. I thought it was a kind of a different sort of take on the whole Superman mythology and going back to his like grandfather instead of just Jor-El. I liked it, and I liked her very much in it. So it's a smart move for them to close this off. But again, it just highlights to me how incredibly questionable it was for them to swap out the entire character instead of just recasting it and moving forward with the narrative that you had always planned. But that's just me. Rob, you hear about this new casting, them adding this. Does this fix the problem they created, or is it just a Band-Aid? What do you think about it?
I think it's kind of weird, to be honest. But, you know, it's not unprecedented. Like in the old sitcom Bewitched, they switched out the main character with another actor. So Dick York and Dick Sargent, people were like, all right.
But they never changed the character. They didn't change the character. They just changed the actor.
It just changed the actor. But I guess it's a solution. They needed to do something, I guess. So I find it to be novel. And she is a great actress, by the way. I do think she's a good actress. So I really like Krypton as well. And I think that, well, I guess it worked. I have to tell you, John, I'm not up on Batwoman. So
Yeah. I mean, it will be interesting too to see if they decide to move forward with this character being in there, or did they just bring her in as a stopgap to say, this is what happened to Kate and now she's gone, let's not talk about it anymore? Or if they're going to make her a regular in the series, and if they do, how do they balance out that she was the original Batwoman, now there's another Batwoman? It's going to be interesting to see, but it's kind of a pit they dug themselves into, I suppose. But the question is for you guys. What do you think about this move? Do you think it was a smart move at this point to make sure they can close off the Kate storyline? Do you think it just highlights the fact that it was a really odd decision to swap out the character in the first place? How do you guys feel about it? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's do one more off the top, and that is this. You know, every Halloween, doesn't matter. Going back, Rob, to some of my earliest days. But whenever you go out on Halloween, one of the more common costumes you will see is some young woman dressed up as Zatanna. That is a popular cosplay, is Zatanna. And now, of course, we've got the DCEU. It's moving in all these directions. It's moving forward. They've had, coming off of last year's Oscars, winning Academy Awards, $1 billion film in The Joker, $1 billion film in Aquaman, of course. They've got things rolling. They just started shooting. Rob, I believe they just started shooting Black Adam, finally, after 5 years of talking about it. So that thing's on a roll. Well, apparently now there's more momentum, as it's just been announced that Zatanna is now going into pre-production. They are starting working on Zatanna, starting with the script. And to get that script made, they've turned to an Academy Award nominated director to actually do it. This comes to us from Variety, who is saying that the director, Emerald Fennell, who directed the the movie Promising Young Woman, which is fantastic, by the way, absolutely incredible, Oscar nominated, She has been brought on by J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot Productions to write the script for this new Zatanna. Now, it does not say, and Rob, you pointed this out to me because I got ahead of myself a little bit. When I first saw the story, I kind of thought it was saying that she was directing and writing, but it's actually just saying she's writing. That's not to say that she's not going to direct it. It's just that as of right now, there's no word if she's directing or not, but she is writing the script for it. Rob, this raises a couple of really interesting questions. Number one, what do you think in general about doing a Zatanna movie? There's been a lot of questions about whether you could actually do this character in a live action way. What do you think about the choice of a person they brought in to now write it? And how are you feeling about this story overall? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I've always liked the character of Zatanna. She's got more of a Doctor Strange vibe, I would imagine. I think it could be good if well done. I think she's a great choice. Emerald Fennell, obviously coming off the success of Promising Young Woman, so it's a great hire. I think she'll probably end up. I would imagine she'd end up directing the film. I think it's cool. I mean, I'm all there for it. I'm curious. I mean, obviously, we're gonna need a pretty great story to go along with it, and hopefully we'll get that. She's a pretty, as far as second tier characters in the DC universe go, she's definitely not up on the top tier. So maybe it'll turn out good because you have more leeway and less expectations from the audience. That's what I would hope.
What do you think? Speaking of the audience, though, like Zatanna is not a top tier DC character in the sense of, for Zatanna fans, don't get mad at me. I'm just saying in the sense of if you go to the average person on the street and say, name 5 DC characters, they'll all probably be able to say Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and then they'll go, is Aquaman DC? Okay. Zatanna is probably not going to be one of the first names on a lot of people's lips at this point. Nope. What do you think the commercial viability of it? Like, do you think this is a type of character that can come out of nowhere, like say Guardians of the Galaxy did, that this is a character that can come out of nowhere and really capture the imaginations of people who've never really known much about the character? Or do you think it's a little too much of a fringe character to really have that wide appeal sort of base? What do you think their prospects are?
Well, I mean, when Iron Man 1 came out, people were talking about, well, not many people know Iron Man. And
True.
He's a pretty top tier character, actually, comparatively speaking. I think Zatanna is going to have a much higher or a much more difficult uphill battle. But, again, the female audience, appealing directly to the female audience, is a huge audience. And there isn't, let's just hope that the film is a little better than, say, Birds of Prey was, because I was looking forward to Birds of Prey, and I have to say, disappointed. Again, I don't think there's going to be any excitement there. People are going to go, who? But then I think they're going to say the same thing about Black Adam. I mean, we know who Black Adam is, but you've got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson playing that role. Once you throw up a trailer for that movie and people see The Rock in it, people are going to get excited. And I think that the same thing could be true if Zatanna is well cast and it looks like an interesting movie. Because for those of you who don't know that she's from the DC universe, it'll just be a character about a hot magician. Who doesn't want to go see that?
Now, listen, a lot of times we'll talk about how it's nice seeing like more unknown characters come in, like a Chris Hemsworth stepping in to be Thor. Not a lot of people knew who he was. But do you think that with a character like Zatanna, because I think you made a really good point about Black Adam and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you could probably do Black Adam because you're bringing in one of the biggest names in the world. Maybe the biggest name in movies to play it. Do you think doing a character like Zatanna that Warner Brothers might be feeling that same way, that if we're going to bring this character not a lot of people know, to get attention, we're going to have to cast big and we're going to have to go with a big name? Or do you think they're not really worried about that right now?
No, I think that they're thinking along those lines. I think they have to go big because otherwise, what's the appeal? It's a character people don't know and an actress people aren't that excited about. So I think you have to go big. But I think the role is very castable.
Right.
And I think that it'll be, look, assuming that Emerald Fennell writes a great script, and there's no reason to think she won't. If she has a killer script, she's one of the hottest filmmakers in Hollywood. I mean, when I say hot, meaning she has a lot of heat on her, I don't mean making comments about her beauty, but she's a hot filmmaker right now, and I think that it's a great package. If you've got a somebody who's clear on a career ascendancy, you have a unique take on a character that uh, is obscure but can be very cool if the script is great, and then you cast an actress that is irresistible, that is a box office draw, you might really have something. But again, those are a lot of factors that I think need to come together to make it the kind of package that a studio gets excited about and gets behind.
And obviously, the choice then is Meryl Streep. We all agree, right? Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep is Zatanna,
Meryl Streep
ladies
plays
and
her
gentlemen.
mom.
Meryl Streep plays her mom. Question is for you guys. What do you think about this? They are moving forward Zatanna. They've brought in an Academy-nominated filmmaker to write the script. You excited about it? Which way do you think they'll go? Do you think they'll go more no-name? Do you think they'll go try to go for big star? How are you feeling about this in general? Jump on down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's move into our main topics today, shall we? And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with our main topics. See, whenever you come across a big topic, story, or issue that you think we should have as a main topic here on the show, just go anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. And by the way, thanks to Todd Fayer, who sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Appreciate that, man. All right, guys, with that down, let's get on to main topic number 1, shall we? And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Benito G, who writes, "Hello, John and Rob, if he's there. I know you've been getting a lot of questions about Young Avengers, so I wanted to know if you saw the new interview with Kevin Feige where he basically didn't say they were working on building up to the Young Avengers, but he didn't exactly deny it either. What do you make of his comments, and do you think they point to a Young Avengers either way?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, listen, ever since they mentioned that we were going to get Bishop in Hawkeye, that character is coming along, there have been whispers about Young Avengers. Once we started to see that we had versions of Wiccan and Speed in WandaVision, more whispers about the possible Young Avengers. When they mentioned that we were going to get a Ms. Marvel, a lot of people asking, do you think they're going to do Young Avengers? Now, I've always kind of been of the opinion that I don't see them doing a Young Avengers. I just don't. I see them bringing in more diverse characters, both diverse in terms of age now, bringing in some more diverse characters and stuff like that. I don't know if I see them doing Young Avengers. At least that's what I've said up until this point. Well, anyway, Kevin Feige was just asked about this, and they just asked him directly, "Are you working up to a Young Avengers?" Here's what he had to say. He says, "As a comic fan," this is Feige being as cryptic as ever, "as a comic fan, anything in the comics is always our inspiration and our guide point. How those things come together and in what shape, it's always subverting expectations. It's always half the fun as meeting them. But yes, you can certainly see that Phase 4 is introducing all sorts of new types of characters, with the potential being endless. Now, all of us at Marvel Studios feel like Nick Fury at the end of Iron Man 1, as new actors and new performers come in, and we'll tell them they're part of a bigger universe. They just now have to do the work required to build their audience." Let me read that last part again. They just now have to do the work required to build their audience. Rob, again, Kevin Feige being magnificently non-committal in everything that he says, but I think it's actually probably maybe gives us more insight into what's going on here than maybe a typical Kevin Feige, who is so calculated with what he does and does not say. But I think this might have given us a little more insight. What I took away from his comments is this: we don't have a blueprint for Young Avengers right now, but we are open to it. And right now we need to see if these are characters that the audience will respond to. Again, let me just bring up that last line again. He says they just now have to do the work required to build their audience. That's what they need to do now. To me, that's Kevin Feige basically laying it out for all the filmmakers and showrunners he does. It's like, look, if we can get the character of Wiccan or Marvel or Bishop or whatever, if we can get the audience really attaching to these characters, then we can start charting out something maybe down the line that involves Young Avengers or whatever, or maybe even just grander scale things for their individual projects. But we need to see if that happens. For now, these are supporting characters in other stories, and that's their first priority. So, Rob, let me ask you this question. How do you interpret what Kevin Feige here said? But first answer this. Over or under 40%. Over under 40%. That within the next 3 years, we get an announcement of a Young Avengers Disney Plus show or a Young Avengers movie. I'm going to set the line at 40%. So answer me that. And then what do you think about Kevin Feige's comments overall?
I'm going to go over. I'm going to say, yes, we are going to get the announcement of a Young Avengers movie in the next 3 years. I think it's just a natural thing to do, especially, and I think it would probably be on Disney Plus. I mean, they're already building to it with Miss Marvel. They've already got Speed and Wiccan introduced. We're going to get, in Hawkeye, we're going to get another character that makes up that. I would imagine maybe in She-Hulk, we might get a Hulkling, who ends up being he's an LGBTQ character that has a relationship with one of Wanda's kids. I could definitely see it happening. Now, like what Kevin Feige said, the comic books are so wide open that, who's to say, because we've still got the X-Men, we've still got the Fantastic Four. We're getting 4 Marvel movies this year, John. This year. Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, the What If animated series, Hawkeye. It's just unbelievable how much they're building up. And I think what's really interesting is they are taking these secondary characters. I mean, with WandaVision, Wanda Maximoff is now a top-tier character. Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes are now top-tier characters. They're no longer second-fiddle Avengers characters. They're being pushed to the forefront. So I think what Marvel is doing is they're building an arsenal of characters that can now carry a movie because we care about them. And I think it's really smart by putting them in these shows, these series, whether it's WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I would imagine Hawkeye is going to put that luster on the Hawkeye character where we're going to really love him. I think they're doing that with all of these characters so they can all, without Steve Rogers and without Tony Stark, they need the ability to have Avengers that people love. And by putting them in these shows, and we're going to see a lot of the Young Avengers now in these upcoming shows, I think they're doing the same thing. So I think it's definitely a possibility, and I would imagine it'll be a streaming show rather than a movie. But if the streaming show's good, maybe we'll see a Young Avengers film.
All right, guys, the question for you is this. What do you make of Kevin Feige's statements? Do you take it from his statements that, yeah, they're definitely doing it? Do you take it from his statements that, nah, they're not planning on doing it? Are you like me, that it's a little bit in the middle of the road? He's saying, let's see if these characters can actually get an audience following them. How do you interpret all that? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. By the way, guys, special thanks to the Sock who sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Appreciate that, man. All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Lauren McFarlane, who writes, the recovery of the movie theater industry has been front and center in movie circles for the last year, with a lot of people saying they weren't very comfortable in going back to the movie theaters, but that seems to be changing. I just read an article in the Hollywood Reporter that says a national study shows that the same percentage of people are now either very comfortable or somewhat comfortable as they were just before the theaters got shut down, which is always encouraging to see, I suppose. Just before the theater shut down. Is this the most definitive sign the theaters are heading towards recovery? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Lauren. And look, there has been a number of things. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but when in terms of the theater industry, people going back to the movies heading back, for public consumption, we have been seeing some encouraging signs. Again, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but at least we'll call them encouraging signs. We've been seeing new case rates in California at least dropping, which is good. We've been seeing them being way ahead of their vaccination schedule. They originally said 100 million vaccinations in the first 100 days. I think they're going to be close to 200 million vaccinations in the first 100 days, which is great. So that's a positive sign. We've seen theaters in New York and Los Angeles reopen. Rob, got to go to the movie theaters the other day. We booked a private theater to go and watch Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which was a fantastic experience. Fantastic. But more than that, I remember on the first couple of days that the theaters opened in LA again, I jumped on, we talked about this in the show, I jumped onto the AMC website and looked at my favorite theater, the AMC Burbank 16, and everything that I was interested in seeing was already booked. Rob, I went and took a look at the opening day. Thankfully, I've already got my tickets, but I went and looked at the opening day ticketing for Godzilla vs. Kong. Every screening was sold out.
Wow.
That I went and looked at. Every screening was sold out that I looked at. Now, of course, there are limited capacity, all those smart things that they need to do, but that's encouraging. And it does seem, and by the way, Travis L. Marshall sends in a super chat badge, as well as Ray Valero. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. Appreciate that. It looks like things are heading that direction. Now, a group called the National Research Group has just done a national study, and they came up with this. Let's go take a look at it here. This comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter that writes, the leading Hollywood entertainment polling firm, National Research Group, has been surveying moviegoers on a weekly basis since the pandemic began on their comfort level in returning to theaters. Thursday of this week was a milestone day. For the first time since the pandemic crippled the theatrical experience a year ago, those saying that they would either feel very or somewhat okay about buying a movie ticket hit a record best of 57%. That's identical to comfort on Sunday, March 15th, 2020, the Sunday before all the U.S. cinemas went dark. If this trend continues, overall comfort levels could cross 60% by the first week of April. That, of course, comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter. And at one point, Rob, we know that percentage, because we talked about it a number of months ago, maybe it was in August or October, something like that, but the same firm put out studies that said confidence levels was down around 21%.
Yeah.
It was down as low as 21%. And it has, of course, come up. By the way, special thank to Andreas, who sends in like a $20 chat badge in the live chat, in the live stream. Thank you so much for that, Andreas. Appreciate the support, man, very much. Rob, again, this is not something, we need to temper this. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves on this. But in the world of good news or bad news, seeing theaters selling out, limited capacity, seeing that these numbers, that it seems like the audience's confidence is heading back in the right direction.
Yeah.
These are all good signs. Again, we need to temper it. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We don't want to suddenly jump up and down and proclaim, mission accomplished. Everything's good now. Everything's perfect. We're right back. No. We're still a long way from that. But it is at least encouraging to see. Rob, let me ask you this. Number one, what do you think about these numbers, and do they give us reason to be a little bit more hopeful about the recovery effort at this point? And secondly, what do you think might be behind the audience feeling apparently a little bit more comfortable about going back now? And do you think those numbers are going to continue to rise? How do you see this?
Well, look, I think now that we've got the vaccine being rolled out and we've seen cases come down, not everywhere. We're not out of the woods yet. Look at what happened in Florida over the weekend. I think people still need to they need to be diligent, and they're not. Even with the vaccine rollout, that doesn't mean that people that don't have the vaccine can't get this virus or pass it along. But I do think that the vaccine is a big step. But I think people want their lives back. I know you went to a movie theater Friday night, but and that was awesome. But it was still something you organized on your own. It wasn't like, I want to go buy a ticket, John. I want to see a movie. And even I don't necessarily feel totally comfortable. If I was vaccinated, I'd feel better. But I think that confidence is increasing. And as the numbers come down in various parts of the country, I think it's going to get safer, and people want to go back and they want their lives back. And I don't think that we can stress enough how much people want their lives back, because they do. And I understand that. But I don't think, while people are going to go back to movie theaters, I don't know when we're going to see theaters return to capacity,
Right.
like the way it was pre-pandemic. And I think one of the things people have to remember about the box office is they still need theaters to open all the way to make 150 or $200 million tentpole film viable at the box office. Everyone's like, well, it made $60 million. Well, that's not enough. These movies, whether it's a Marvel movie or a big DC film, they need to make $1 billion. And we're a long way from that. But hopefully it will come in time. I just hope people are careful.
Yeah. I mean, and it should be pointed out here that a movie can still make, without being at full capacity, a movie can still make a decent amount of money. But as Rob is pointing out, it becomes extremely challenging because we all know how important opening weekend numbers are. And they've become more and more important as the years have gone on when you look at the movie-going trends. It's just very, very difficult to have those types of opening weekend numbers like you really need to have. You can still have longer-term numbers. You just wait a little bit longer to go to see it, but it's going to be interesting to see how that all turns out. Guys, the question is for you. What do you think about these numbers and these studies that we're seeing? Do you feel that, like, when amongst the people you talk to, do you feel like the idea or the confidence about the idea of going back to the movie theaters is increasing? Maybe you're with that, maybe you're not. How do you guys see it? Jump on down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by I've Got the Mic, who writes, "Hey, John, early reactions are out for Godzilla vs. Kong, and they're very positive. The reactions seem to suggest the human parts are weak, but the fights are great. As someone who cares to see the fights and not the humans, I'm happy to hear this, but what are your thoughts? Thanks." All right, thanks for sending that in, man. And you all know that right now, the movie I am dying to get into theaters to see is Godzilla vs. Kong. This is the movie I am dying to see in the immediate term. I didn't care much about this movie prior to the trailer dropping because, quite frankly, I was disappointed in Godzilla King of the Monsters personally. I know a lot of people really enjoyed it. I was personally a little bit let down by it. So I didn't really have a lot of excitement about a Godzilla vs. Kong. And then that damn trailer dropped. And that trailer, for me, is the best trailer since the Logan trailer. I really feel like it is the best trailer since the Logan trailer. And I lost my damn mind. Like, I do not lose my... Rob, I don't lose my mind over trailers. Not very often. Hardly ever. I lost my mind over this trailer. I've been super excited about the notion of seeing it. And yes, the first reactions are out. And the first reactions are very, very good. They are very good. Now, the common theme that we've been hearing from the early reactions out of Godzilla vs. Kong is this, starting with the negative. The human stuff isn't great. I know the one guy from Uproxx, Mike Ryan, who is a guy that I know, he was like me. He wrote that, he hated the human stuff in Godzilla King of the Monsters. And he said, you know what? This is better. The human stuff in Godzilla vs. Kong is better. Still not great. Because let's face it, we're all going to see Godzilla vs. Kong so we can see Millie Bobby Brown talking to a Skarsgård, right? That's why. No, that's not why we're going to see him. And I love Skarsgård and Millie Bobby Brown, absolutely. But we're going there to see Godzilla vs. Kong. And they're saying it delivers full throttle, pedal to the metal, all the way out. And by the way, Cam K writes in a super chat badge in the live stream. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. This is what we wanted to see. And it seems like universally they're all saying, oh my God, the Godzilla versus Kong stuff. And we all know Mechagodzilla is there too. I don't know if you saw it, Rob, but they just released that new shot of, you see, that's a close-up of King Kong's eye, and you can see the red dots of Mechagodzilla's eye. Anyway, so we know it's Mechagodzilla.
I can't wait, dude.
But
cannot wait.
I was very, very excited to hear that the human stuff has been shrunk a little bit from Godzilla King of the Monsters, that the human stuff is better than it was in Godzilla King of the Monsters, and that the monster action lives up to the hype. That's all I needed to hear. Look, Rob, I am not, I have no delusions of grandeur here. I am not going into Godzilla versus Kong expecting to see, Shakespearean-like thespianism. I'm not going into Godzilla vs. Kong to see the next Academy Award-winning screenplay. I know what I'm asking for in this movie, and I think I know what to expect. But if they can just deliver on the promise of that trailer, Rob, you've said that there is nothing greater in life than how did you put it? Than the promise of a trailer being delivered. Is that how you put it? How did you say it?
Well, yeah, something like I don't know. I don't remember exactly what I said. I might have said it in your movie, I think.
Yeah. There's nothing greater than when a trailer delivers on its promise in the movie,
Yeah,
right?
right,
It lives
right.
up to its potential. And if they can just do that, I'm excited. And so I was not expecting to hear first reactions of people saying Academy Award nominee. I'm not looking for that. I just want to hear that the monster fights are great, that they've touched up and worked on the weaknesses of maybe some of the previous ones. It sounds like that. My hype level is now increasing. Rob, you hear this? Where are you right now? Because you are a fan of Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So where are you right now going into Godzilla versus Kong?
Dude, my hype level is at 11. I mean, I've been a Godzilla fan since I was a little kid. And by the way, I do not like on my Twitter stream, it seems people are predominantly Team Kong. You're wrong. First of all of you.
Oh no, it's all Kong, baby. It's all about Kong.
It's all Godzilla, and it always will be. Godzilla has been to space. King Kong has not. I mean, let's
Good point.
forget.
Good point.
And by the way, Godzilla has also danced on screen. Maybe not what John did in his old dance crew, but Godzilla has danced.
And by the way,
camera.
Has King Kong teamed up with a giant Spider-Man? No, Godzilla has.
Yes.
Go look it up. Godzilla has teamed up with a giant Spider-Man before.
I appreciate Godzilla's more of a sense, and Kong is more of a introspective, sensitive, giant animal. But I mean, when it comes down to it, John, who's going to defend the Earth from invading alien hordes? Godzilla. And I can't wait to see this film. I'm very excited, and it looks great, and I mean, I'm so there for it. So, and I'm hoping it's great. I really am hoping it's great. I was one of those people that liked King of the Monsters because it really harked back to my childhood. There's a lot of, if you know the Godzilla canon, there was a lot to love in that film. And I'll tell you, I really like Skull Island, Kong Skull Island. I
enjoyed Kong Skull Island, yeah.
And I'm hoping that we get something that's look, if you could mash up Kong Skull Island and Godzilla King of the Monsters, bruh, come on.
You know, I saw another piece on Godzilla versus Kong the other day when they were talking to a lot of the actors, and I guess we should have deduced this ourselves, but besides just there being Kong and Godzilla, there are two different factions of humans in it. There is the Godzilla humans in this, Millie Bobby Brown and things like that, and then you have the Kong humans in there that we see in the thing as well. And it's really neat seeing that they're kind of setting up this divide. They're talking about there was an ancient war between their species and they're the last two. And in the new piece, Rob, I don't know if you saw the new promotional piece, but they were saying there can't be two alpha titans. And these are them. This is it. It's Kong and Godzilla, baby. They are the alpha titans. And I am so stoked to see this movie. My face is turning red. I am so excited for this movie. I cannot even put it into words. It is crazy how hyped I am for this. Anyway, guys, the question for you is, where are you right now on Godzilla versus Kong? The trailer's spectacular. Word coming out about it is very, very positive. Maybe this doesn't appeal to you. It's like, you know what? I need some good, solid story. This sounds a little bit questionable. I don't know, and that's fair. But where are you right now on Godzilla versus Kong? Do these reactions do anything to kind of move the needle for you a little bit? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With all that down and out of the way, let's start moving on and taking your live comments and questions. Once again, if you want to fire in a live comment or question, now, just to let you guys know, if you fire in a live comment or question now, it probably won't be able to get in by the end of today's show, but it probably will get in for the companion video that me and Kimberly Curran are doing a little bit later today. So if you want to send that in now, simply use the tip link that's down in the description of the video. Just click on it, or you can enter it in manually at www.streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. All right, guys. With that down, let's get on over and start taking your live comments and questions, shall we? We're going to start out here with Popcorn Coke in a Movie, who writes, "Hey, John, why do your spoiler shows, so let me try this again. Why do you do your spoiler shows so quick these days? With WandaVision, I was able to get up early and watch before work, but with Justice League, it was impossible to watch before your show. I remember you used to give us at least a day or two, just curious. All right, so it's a fair question. And the answer to that is this. Normally, when we're talking about spoiler reviews, we're talking about movies that play theatrically. And you only have so many opportunities you can actually go. It takes a little bit of time. So I like to give everybody a few days time to go and watch that. When something is actually on TV and you can watch it in your home, I do shrink that window. That's why we do, the Disney Plus reviews on Fridays, right? So we did The Mandalorian on Fridays. We did WandaVision on Fridays. We're doing Falcon and Winter Soldier on Fridays. Now, with Justice League, we did do it on the Thursday. And yes, that was a little bit early, but I simply had no choice because Friday was already taken, because Fridays is when we do the Disney Plus spoiler reviews. That was for Falcon and Winter Soldier. And I had plans for the weekend that made it impossible for me to do a spoiler review on Saturday or Sunday. And I just felt that Monday was just waiting far too long. So even though doing it Thursday wasn't ideal, it's where it had to be. It was either that or waiting all the way till Monday, and I thought that was too late. So yeah, normally we won't do them that quickly, but it was just the circumstances. We had no choice. And by the way, we almost had as many people watching that, even though it was a little bit early, we had almost as many people watching that as we had watching our WandaVision, the spoiler discussion. So there were apparently still a lot of people that were able to make it, but normally we will try to not make them that early. Okay, next up. We got Major Tom who writes, "Hey, John, I finally saw Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I love the previous version, but this was much better. Better character development, especially with Cyborg. That said, I'm not impressed. Is destined to become a meme. You know it's true." Rob, look, I 2 points I want to make here. To me, the absolute best moment in Batman versus Superman, and maybe the best moment in all the DCEU, or sorry, the best moment in Justice League, and maybe the best moment in all the DCEU. When Steppenwolf was about to axe Cyborg in the back, and Superman swoops in, and Superman don't block the shot. Superman doesn't push Steppenwolf out of the way. Superman doesn't grab Steppenwolf's arm and says, "No, no, no, you're not." Superman flies in front of him, ching, and just lets him hit him. It's like, take your best shot, bitch. I'm Superman. I nearly passed out from excitement. Like that shot, he just stands there and lets Steppenwolf hit him with his axe, gives him his best shot, and then he says the words, "I'm not impressed." I'm like, this is the Superman. That was the best moment in the movie. It's the best moment in all of the DCEU. I freaking loved it. But let me talk for a second here about the Cyborg thing, Rob, because this is, and I'm actually thinking about making a separate video about this. But Cyborg, and one scene in particular with Cyborg, is the representation of what made the Snyder Cut version better than the theatrical version, can be summed up in one scene. And that scene is Cyborg and the waitress. Now it's not the only great, I'm just saying this scene represents perfectly why I believe the Snyder Cut version exceeded the theatrical version. And it's this. In the theatrical version and in the Snyder Cut version, minus the waitress scene. Okay, so let's pretend the waitress scene doesn't exist for a second. Just pretend that for a minute. That the Cyborg waitress scene doesn't exist. In both the theatrical and in the Snyder Cut version, Cyborg honestly comes across as a mopey, irritating, emo, bitter, whatever. He just comes across as a bitter, emo, whatever. It's difficult to get attached to that character emotionally because he just comes across as irritating. Now, give the movie a little bit more runtime and put in a scene with Cyborg and the waitress. And that one scene, Rob, fundamentally changes the entire way that we perceive this character. Because in that scene of Cyborg and the waitress, we see his heart. We see what motivates him. We see what his principles are. We see what his moral North Star is. And I've heard the debates, well, he stole money from the bank, or by creating money out of thin air, he's endangering the world economy. That's not what's important. What's important is we see Cyborg's heart. And Rob, by seeing that scene, all these other scenes with Cyborg that may come across like he's just mopey and bitter and angry, it totally changes. Now, because we have that scene, we see Cyborg as a good man in pain. We see a hero who's struggling to deal with the new realities of his life. We see a man who's caught in an impossible situation. The addition of that one scene, Rob, fundamentally alters the way we see the character in his totality and gives us a whole new view of him. Now, I will juxtapose that against the Flash scene, the Flash where he saves Iris. I would contend and argue that the Flash scene with Iris didn't teach us anything about the character we didn't already know. It didn't fundamentally alter the way we saw the character, and it didn't do anything to move the story forward. I felt like they could have cut that scene out of the movie. But the Cyborg scene and several others like it throughout the movie, these little things fundamentally change the way we saw the whole character. And when you change the way the audience sees the character, you change the way the audience sees the movie. And that was key. You know what it reminded me of, Rob? Remember X-Men 2? There was a scene where Bobby, Rogue, and Pyro go to Bobby's house, right? And there's this scene where, why is Pyro so angsty, whatever, right? There's a scene where they arrive at Bobby's house and they just show Pyro looking at a family picture of Bobby with his family, of Bobby having a loving family. And without any dialogue, you see the pain in Pyro's face looking at it. And without a single line of dialogue, we learn so much about Pyro, his motivations, what make up who he is, just by the way he was looking at the loving family of a portrait on the wall, right? And this Cyborg scene was that to me. Yeah, there was dialogue in it, yes, but it fundamentally changed things. And to me, that sort of represents what made the overall movie better to me. I don't know, Rob, you look at Cyborg, this is the biggest difference to me between the two movies, is the character of Cyborg. And that was so key. How did you see that?
Well, no, I think I think you and I disagree with the Flash scene, because both scenes, like you said, the Cyborg scene was essential because you learn all about him, and you also have a demonstration of his powers. When Joe Morton is explaining that and you kind of see that those graphics that depict what he's able to do, we don't really understand it. And seeing how he can visualize numbers, how he can translate data into the visual representation of money, so we as the audience understand how he sort of sees this digital realm, was really important. And I really liked it. And I think the same was true. Like, we all know Flash because of the TV show, but you can't assume that everybody that watches your movie already knows Flash. And I did like the demonstration of his powers in that scene when he rescues Iris. Because I think you need that. I think you have to explain, and in a way, it kind of does the same thing as the Cyborg scene, because you know his heart and you know where Flash is at. But with Cyborg, obviously, the biggest leap that the Snyder Cut makes is with that character, and he really is. I mean, when he's holding the mother boxes together, is trying to prevent the Unity from happening, and you feel for the guy. You're like, man, I hope he does this. I hope he pulls through. I hope he lives, because you really like him. And the scene where he scores the touchdown and the empty seat where his father isn't there because he's working and isn't at this triumphant moment of his, you really feel for that character. And it really is a huge leap from the original version of Justice League. And you wonder, why was so much of him cut out in the first place?
Yeah. Listen, believe me, I've had a lot of questions about what was the point of what Warner Brothers did with the theatrical version in the first place. There's a lot of that question. Anyway, that's for another time. Let's move on, shall we? Let's see. Next up, Big Dog LT writes, "Hey, John and Rob, my friend wrote to you months ago about the drama at Warner Brothers during Kevin Tsujihara's days. I'm in grad school, and the MBA case on this would speak to failures of organizational leadership. Let's finally admit it. The DCEU never stood a chance due to pure corporate greed at the behest of the merger between AT&T and Time Warner. You always do a great Campea Classroom. Please have you and Rob break it down. The executives of Warner Brothers at the time only cared about preserving bonuses. The Snyder Cut was beautiful." Well, I mean, let's not put it all on there. Let's not put it all there. Like, you know my opinion of Man of Steel. It's one of the greatest comic book movies of all time, in my opinion. But the reality is half the audience and half the critics didn't like it. And that has nothing to do with Warner Brothers. They made a great movie. But the audience didn't respond to it. It is what it is. So we can't put it all at their feet. But Rob, you and I were talking on the phone the other day, wherein at the end of the day, when you look now back at the theatrical version, which remember, the Snyder Cut is not the follow-up. The Snyder Cut is the original. That's the original version of that movie. The theatrical version was the secondary one that came. When you look at that now in hindsight, and you're like, wait a minute. So they didn't change anything about the story. They all they did was they took this meat cleaver, cut it in half, tried to add some more humor to it, and gave zero time to actually execute a different version of the movie, insisting that the release date had to stay the same. There was no time given to do any of the adjustments, any of that kind of stuff. And what we later found out, Rob, through the major trades, was that Kevin Tsujihara, who at the time was the head dog over at Warner Brothers, refused to allow them to move the release date to give the filmmakers more time to do something a little bit different, refused to let them move the release date because his bonus as CEO was completely predicated on box office dollars made that calendar year. And you and I talked on the phone about how, look, we all knew that there was some absolute, what's the best word? What's the word I'm looking for? Malfunctions going on around Warner Brothers executives and the executive level around that time. We all knew there was a bunch of dysfunction there. I don't think now, in hindsight, we're able to see, holy crap, the dysfunction there is almost it's almost undescribable how much of a mess that was. And I think we all kind of knew it a little bit at the time, but now we're starting to see just to what extent it was. Now, Rob, I'm not sure how much that can be attributed just to what happened with Justice League and how much it attributed to other things as well. Again, Man of Steel was great, but the audience and the critics just didn't like it. And I thought Batman versus Superman was very good. The audience and the critics just didn't get on board with whatever. But I don't know, Rob, how much more do you think we can put on the feet of the WB executives at that time period?
Oh, I think a lot. I mean, you know, what's really interesting to me is with this film, you could have cut this movie down. Like, for instance, Zack Snyder's style is very unique. His use of slow motion. A lot of people think there's too much, but to me, there's something mythic about the whole thing. But if you wanted to, you could have just edited this movie down to 2.5 hours and retained a lot of what was there, and you wouldn't have to do much. I mean, they clearly balked at Zack Snyder's entire approach. He even addressed this at one point in one of the interviews I read. They just lost confidence in his approach because they thought Batman v Superman was going to gross $1 billion or $1.5 billion, and it did not. And they responded to a lot of what the critics were saying was his sort of dour approach, I guess, to these characters. So they lost confidence in Snyder, which I think was a big mistake. They knew what they were getting into. They had 2 previous movies. They could see all the dailies. They knew what was being made. I think it was a complete failure on the executive, we'll call it the executive branch of Warner Brothers. And they were looking for a fix. They were proceeding from, I think, a false assumption that, hey, let's go get the one guy in Hollywood that's done exactly what we want to do, which is make $1.5 billion with a superhero movie. And at the time, that was Joss Whedon. So they went and got that guy. But what they were asking him to do is basically rebuild, to take a movie and turn it into something that it wasn't. And that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, why they tried to do that, inject humor and get Henry Cavill to come back when they had to. I mean, how they could look at the footage of Henry Cavill, the horrible, awful CG footage of his face. Who thought that was a good idea or that would even pass muster? It blows my mind that people at Warner Brothers allowed this to happen, and they did. And you're right, it was all. I think I would lay 90% of the blame at the feet of Warner Brothers executives, Kevin Tsujihara being the most egregious one of them.
What I still don't understand now is, if you wanted Whedon to come in and do something different, why not give him the time and actually say, you make your version of Justice League? Instead, don't change anything about the story. Keep the story and the fundamentals of the story the same. Throw in some lighter humor, figure out a way to cut this movie in half and yet still make it work, and you have no time to do it. I just don't understand why if they really wanted to change that, but well, we know now why. Kevin Tsujihara wanted his bonus.
Right.
And that is, just so you guys know, there was a question about whether Tsujihara would still be around after the year ended, and he thought if Justice League doesn't get put out in theaters, his bonus would not reflect whatever box office money that meant, and so he very selfishly wanted to do that. Anyway, we could go on with this forever, but let's move on, shall we? Next up, we've got Rowdy Rodney Pfeiffer. Rowdy Rodney Pfeiffer writes, I'm neither a DC lover nor hater in that I don't feel strongly either way about their movies. But Zack Snyder Justice League is just boring. It's just a boring, slow, almost intolerable movie. Nothing about the story changed. Why the hype? What am I missing? I would say this, and again, look, it's all subjective. Different people are going to have different points of view, and I respect that. I would say this. While I do feel like this, and I've said this multiple times, the 4-hour movie could have easily been cut down to 3.5, maybe even a little bit less. And by the way, Iconic Reaction sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, Iconic. And that would have improved the pacing and the tightness of the film. That being said, even without cutting that stuff out, I still thought it had decent pace. I just thought it could have been a much better decent pace. I never once, Rob, felt like the movie was slow. You know what I mean?
Right.
Even in scenes that I didn't think necessarily had to be there, like the Flash scene, like the famous yodeling Aquaman sirens. Oh, Aquaman's going to go for a swim, everybody. And the girls have to sing their songs and sniff his sweater. I don't understand what the point of that scene was. But did I ever feel like the movie was slow? No. I thought it could have been even better, but I never felt like the pacing was overly slow. I never felt the movie was boring. I definitely never felt that. And there are, even some of my favorite movies will have moments that are kind of boring. I never thought the movie was boring at all, but I get it. It's all subjective. You felt that way. Rob, did you ever feel like the pacing was too slow?
No, because I thought it created a specific mood. I mean, it really depends how you watch movies. I've heard people say it was slow because they're like, get to it. I get it. I understand. But I kind of just laid back and let it all wash over me. And it created the mood of the piece was as much a part of anything as the plot. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I really enjoyed all of it. It was a singular vision that I was there for, you know?
All right. Next up. Dean Youngblood writes, I saw an interview Snyder did with MTV News, and they asked him about a rumor that he had wanted Daniel Day-Lewis as Zod in Man of Steel. He confirmed that they did swing for the fences and did have a phone call. I love Michael Shannon as Zod. Michael Shannon was great as Zod. But Daniel Day-Lewis would have been something else. Well, yeah, obviously, Daniel Day-Lewis is the greatest of all time. He is the best there is, best there was, best there ever will be. Unfortunately retired. But that's not surprising, because I remember when they were talking to his rep, they were saying they literally turned down 80 to 100 roles a year. That studios and projects just come lay at his feet and say, this role is yours. Here's what we're offering. Sign your own check. But he literally turned down 80 to 100 projects a year because he's Daniel Day-Lewis. So it's good to hear they went for it, but a lot of people were going for it with Daniel Day-Lewis. But again, end of the day, Michael Shannon was an awesome Zod and one of the reasons why I love Man of Steel so much. Big Dog LT writes, Also, and I got to say this because of the emotion it really generated upon seeing this new cut, how much does Snyder Cut give credence to what Ray Fisher has been upset about? I know, none of us were there, but the stark takes makes you wonder. No, listen, I don't think any of this speaks anything to about whatever gripes that are between Walter Hamada, the head guy of all DC films, and Ray Fisher, whatever. I don't care. I wasn't there. None of us were. Anybody who says they know what happened is either lying or trying to sell you something. We don't know. But I can get why he'd be a little butthurt. You start in this movie, and you know that in this movie, your character is a central character, and it really highlights the character, and especially with the addition of that waitress scene. And then you get to the new one, and you're not the central character anymore. And those key scenes are removed, and your character doesn't come across nearly as well. Well, of course, as an actor, you'd feel a little upset about that. I get that. I totally do. Anyway, Carlos Eskimo writes, "Hey, John, which villain and army would win in a fight? Loki and the Chitauri or Ultron and his bots? I feel like Ultron would mop the floor with Loki." Oh, Rob, I don't know about you, but to me, that's an easy question. Ultron and his army wins that fight. Ultron and a bunch of little Ultranites, whatever, running around. I think that's easy. What do you say?
I completely agree, dude. I'm Team Ultron all the way. I've always been an Ultron fan. I will always be an Ultron fan. And when they made James Spader voice Ultron, I'm like, they made that character just for me.
Dude, I tell you, I'm not going to lie. And this is the wrong reason. I admit, as a fan, it's the wrong reason to want a character back. But I have been very interested into seeing Ultron return just to hear James Spader's voice as Ultron again. I want that very, very badly. And I admit that's the wrong reason to want it back. I totally admit that. All right. The Big Lebowski writes, "Whenever I see people extremely bash movies, I channel my inner dude. That's just like your opinion, man." Yep, it totally is. And we got to understand that. It's all subjective. We all have our own opinions and things. All right. Mike Lovin writes, "Part 1 of 10. Okay, here we go. Hey, John, longtime fan since before AMC. Well, thank you so much, man. Please strap yourself in and bear with me. This is a long one. Multiple times you have suggested that Hawkeye is the most useless Avenger, and I respectfully disagree. I've never said Hawkeye's useless. I have just said that while I love Hawkeye and I love Black Widow, I love them in the MCU. I am just least interested in them having solo projects. I love them as a part of an ensemble. I don't mean to harshly say he's the most useless, but okay, let's move on. The most useless Avenger is hands down, unequivocally Falcon. Let me be clear. I am strictly talking about the Falcon in the MCU, not the comics. The only reason he was ever associated with the Avengers is because he, by chance, happened to run into Captain America one spring morning, and since Cap still had a hole in his heart where Bucky used to be when he came across Sam Wilson and made a connection through their military background. He took on Sam as an emotional surrogate from that point forward in place of Bucky, which at best makes him the human equivalent of an emotional support animal. Even on the most basic of levels, he does not even measure up to any of the non-powered Avengers, especially Hawkeye. Hawkeye and Black Widow may not have any powers, but they are specially trained ultra assassins specializing in almost every form of hand-to-hand combat and weaponry. Either one could take out Falcon in 2 seconds with little to no effort. Well, he flies around. He's even outclassed by Maria Hill on a basic level. Sam and Rhodey are the same out of the gear. But once geared up, Rhodey has the same capabilities, firepower, and speed as Iron Man. Well, Sam is falling behind, flapping his wings. His background is not at Avengers level. He did 2 tours overseas, pararescue. Which I'm sorry to say, 2 tours is bare minimum and not at all impressive for one-term service, and pararescue is almost never used overseas, even with wings. I was overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq for 10 years, and they were only used twice. His combat and fighting skills are almost non-existent, and shoots as good as Stormtrooper. This is harsh. And shoots as good as a Stormtrooper. That's why they gave him the submachine guns, because he couldn't hit the side of a bantha on his best day. So, as you can see, on the most basic of levels, he doesn't measure up even at his best. Flying is not that cool when half of the team can fly better than you. At most, he's a happy Hogan, and even that is too much credit. What do you think? Wow, Mike Lovin, let us know how you really think about the.
That was pretty epic.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start on a basic level here. On a basic level, is it true Falcon has no powers? Yes, that is true. Is it true that his background is nowhere near as impressive as, say, a Black Widow when you look at what went into her training and her preparation and all that kind of stuff, and maybe even Hawkeye? Okay, maybe. I think, though, the part about it is going back to almost like a Batman line, Rob, is that what is it the powers that make the hero? Is it the powers that make a hero? The thing about Sam Wilson, while I do not believe he should at all take up the mantle of Captain America, I don't believe Bucky should either. But the thing that attracted a Captain America to somebody like Sam Wilson was he has the heart of a hero. He is loyal. He has strong ideals that he sticks with. He stands by his convictions. He believes in right and wrong, and he believes in the idealism that Captain America had for what the world could be. Now, you put on top of that, he is a uniquely skilled, and I thought the opening scene of Falcon and Winter Soldier, dude, that whole aerial combat scene was cinematic. It was absolutely cinematic. Look, would we take Bucky and Sam in a fight against, I don't know, Thor and Valkyrie? No, that's a real short fight. But in telling stories about heroes, I mean, Batman had no superpowers either. But Batman is a totally different animal. It's stupid to even try to compare it, I suppose. But I get it. Is he the guy you pick in a fight? If they had a round robin Ultimate Fighter Championship tournament amongst all the Avengers, is Sam Wilson ending up anywhere but last place? No, he's coming in last. Does that mean he's not a compelling, inspiring hero that can be part of a great story? He still can. So I agree with what you're saying in a way, but I also believe we're overlooking some of the other things, not just about how much firepower does the character have. I think there's more to it. Rob, how would you address what Mike Lovin is saying here, and how would you look at Sam?
Well, first of all, I mean, he's a soldier. You know, he's a trained career soldier. So he's a tactician. He's a flyer. He's an aviator at the most basic level, which is something that is useful. I think the opening scene of Falcon and Winter Soldier shows just how valuable Sam Wilson can be. And while, sure, he doesn't have superpowers and he's not a super soldier, he hasn't taken the serum, he's just a man, he's still very good at what he does. And I think that, isn't that what you want? I mean, sure, is he trained as well as Hawkeye or Black Widow? Maybe not, but they can't fly the way he can. You know, reconnaissance, there's all kinds of things he could do that the Avengers might need. He's certainly not a big gun, but look, neither was Tony Stark. You know, Tony Stark's a guy wearing a technology, same as Sam.
Yep, let's not forget Ant-Man beat him in a fight.
Well, that is true. But I mean, I think that look, I like the character. I've liked the character since I was a kid because I used to love the Captain America and Falcon comics, and I had one of those Power Records, those 45s that you turn the pages of the comic as they narrated the story to you. I had one that was Captain America and Falcon. I must have heard it 100 times. I just love Falcon. I love Sam, and I think Anthony Mackie kills it as the character. So,
yeah, I know he does. And this first episode really drove that home as well. So.
Yeah, he's terrific.
All right, next up. Anyway, thanks for writing in your thoughts so eloquently, Mike, and I'm glad you shared your opinions on that. All right, next up. Gator for Life writes, Snyder Cut was okay. I mean, I think I may have even liked it more than the old version, but I also feel like people are way overpraising it. DC expectations are so low right now that if it doesn't completely suck, it's praised as a triumph. Well, I mean, this is how I look at it. I think there were there were a number of people that were already so invested in this that even if it was a 4-hour clip of a McDonald's manager masturbating in a dumpster, people would have said it's the greatest thing of all time. But I also think on the opposite side, there was a bunch of people that, really hate Snyder and whatever. And even if this was 4 hours of the best of Spielberg, Scorsese, and Hitchcock all rolled into one, they were going to say it was terrible, no matter how good it was. So I think those two extremes cancel themselves out. Honestly, I do. I think those two extremes cancel out. Listen, I am not somebody who is just going into just waiting to praise on Snyder Cut, but so I thought it was really good. I thought it was better than Aquaman. And that's saying a lot because I really enjoyed Aquaman. So is there some of that? Sure. But I think there's some of that in just about every movie, but I don't think you can just paint a broad stroke like that. I mean, that's just kind of my take on it at any rate. All right, next up. The Wakandan Forever writes, when Captain America throws his mighty shield, I remember this song, all those who oppose his will must yield. If he's led to a fight and a duel is due, the red, the white, and the blue will come through when Captain America throws his mighty shield. I'm still kind of waiting on Captain America to make an appearance in Falcon and Winter Soldier. I do want to see that. Wakandan also writes, how in the world are they going to follow up WandaVision? Don't worry, the MCU is good, is in good hands. Falcon and Winter Soldier was amazing. I loved it. And Rob, I do got to say, my jaw was on the ground. When we heard Kevin Feige say that they're going to bring their full cinematic experience to their Disney Plus shows, I thought, yeah, we've heard talk like that before, all that sorts of stuff. And it's never really true. I mean, even Game of Thrones, which was fabulous. I mean, fabulous top tier for television. Did it ever really feel like the production value of a true top tier cinematic blockbuster was there? Not really. But man, that aerial combat scene to start off Falcon and Winter Soldier, my jaw was, the cinematography of it, the effects of it, the action of it, the choreography of it, my jaw was on the floor, and it was a great start. I thought it was a great start. Now, if I had to compare episode 1 against all of WandaVision, well, all of WandaVision, you got a complete story. It's much better. But for a first episode, I thought was great. What were your thoughts just in general of the first episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier?
Like you, I thought that aerial sequence, it's very hard to make an aerial sequence totally convincing. Like if you look at movies like Air Force One, a lot of the plane effects, they never can quite get it right. That opening sequence was absolutely spectacular. The effects were flawless. The action was terrific. The choreography was amazing. My jaw was on the floor like you. I mean, I'm like, this is amazing. And I thought the whole episode, the cinematography, everything, it felt like a feature film. And I have to tell you, I was also very surprised at how much they delved in to the private lives of both guys. I thought it worked. Bucky in therapy and the story that what's revealed and what's going on was really heartbreaking. And then the scene where I loved how they filled in bits of the Marvel universe. Like, yeah, if you've been gone for 5 years, you have no more credit history. So you can't get a loan. As much as I might love you and you're an Avenger, our bank has certain standards. It's academic. If you have no credit history, you can't get a loan. And, they were both blipped. And I was like, wow, I never thought about that. And I thought that was really a fascinating way to build the world, build the Marvel world, and give us some insight into where the planet is at. Because clearly it's a mess. The planet's a mess now with the return of all these people. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that as we move on. The villains wanted to get rid of all national borders, or that's what they're saying. I love all these ideas. It's all world building and character building. And I think it's terrific. I'm just sorry it's only 5 more episodes.
Yeah. That it really did hit me. Like when the episode ended, I was like, oh, there's only 5 more of these? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, and by the way, that whole thing about the old Japanese man and that reveal,
dude.
I audibly gasped because other people caught on earlier. I admittedly didn't. But when he goes to the old guy's door and he opens the door and he sees the shrine with the son's picture, I'm like, oh my God, there's a scene coming in this show where Bucky is going to finally confess to the old man, I'm the one who killed your son. And I cannot wait to see that. I cannot wait to see that. Anyway, that's just me.
You know what else too? Just quickly, I thought that the way you realize with Bucky that he's 106 years old, and the fact that the only memories he has are when they unthaw him and he kills people. Can you imagine what it's like to live with that?
Oh,
I mean,
no. Yeah. It's
no wonder he's in therapy. Life.
It's no wonder the dude's in therapy when the damn thing starts. Okay, next up, Mike Levin writes, hey, John, in Falcon and Winter Soldier, why is Sam throwing around Cap's shield? Cap was able to throw the shield the way that he did because of his superhuman abilities. No matter how much Sam plays with it, he could never use it the same way Cap did. Well, I mean, that's true to a degree. I mean, he does not have Captain America's strength. He'll never be able to throw it as hard. He doesn't have Captain America's heightened senses. He'll never be able to throw it as accurately. He doesn't have Captain America's agility. He won't be able to, do as complicated moves. But that doesn't mean he can't, on a very human level, still wield it very skillfully, right? Rob, it reminds me of this. They showed Sam get into a fight with Batroc the Leaper, George St. Pierre. Cap was able to defeat him in one-on-one combat. Sam was not. So I feel like they are drawing a line. They're not trying to say Sam can do everything Captain America could do. They're making, right. And they did that right at the beginning, saying, hey, Batroc the Leaper is probably one of the best hand-to-hand combat guys on the planet. So no, Sam couldn't just walk in, even with his wings, couldn't just walk in there and beat him in a fight. And so they are showing that he can do a lot, but he's not necessarily on the same level as Captain America. So I thought that message was clear. How did you interpret that?
Well, I did too. I mean, first of all, how cool was it they brought that character back?
Oh, so great. I was so excited. I thought that was
just dope. And look, it wasn't exactly the easiest way. I mean, that whole sequence, jumping from plane to plane or whatever, a helicopter, and the way Sam used his wings as a shield against bullets. I mean, it was great. But yes, he's not a super soldier. So, he wasn't able to do what Captain America could do, and that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. But man, I loved it. I loved all that, dude.
All right, let's move on here. Next up, we got the Wakandan Forever who writes, John, the crew and the film fan community love you guys. Oh, thank you so much. It's been crazy lately, but things are looking up. We have great streaming content and the theaters are reopening again. Quick reminder of my fellow human beings, we are all one tribe, Wakandan Forever. And Rob, it is neat because it does feel like for the first time in a long time, as film fans, we can be quite we've got a lot of stuff to feel good about. I mean, over the past year, there's been the odd thing coming along here and there, but now the theaters are reopening. We got great stuff on streaming. We got Godzilla versus Kong and Mortal Kombat coming, and a lot of other stuff is too. It feels good to let myself feel a little bit optimistic again. It does feel good. All right, next up. No Country for Old Sam writes, The Last Crusade is not only the best Indiana Jones film, it might be the best adventure movie of all time. I can't even think of something that could compare. Well, I won't get into its all-time status, but I will tell you this. The Last Crusade is my favorite of the Indiana Jones movies, and it is one of my favorite all-time adventure movies for sure. The fact that we were able to go back to the theaters a couple of days ago, book a private theater, go in, and one of us who were there hadn't even seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade yet. So it was a brand new experience for one of our friends who came. It was such a great experience. And it's been a long time since I've seen Last Crusade on the big screen, man. So it was really good to do that again. All right, next up, Scott Brown writes, Batman versus Superman. I love the film, but I noticed people in the movie blaming Soup for everything narratively to justify Batman's potion? To justify Batman's, you mean position? But no one argues the other side. If it's not for humans would have been wiped out. Does this contribute to the dire tone of the movie? I don't know about that. I mean, there are a lot of people. Rob, when I look back at Batman versus Superman, I don't remember in all the discussions going on that everybody was against Superman. I think there's that one line of dialogue where you hear a commentator talking about saying, maybe he's not some messianic figure. Maybe he's not some devil. Maybe he's just a guy trying to do the right thing. And I think they were showing a diversity of opinion, that versus the vigilantism of Batman, especially as Batman was getting more and more extreme in that vigilantism. By the way, Todd Fair sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that, man. So I don't know. How did you see that? How would you respond to that, Rob?
Well, I mean, I think that's probably true. I mean, part of what both of these movies are, well, what Batman v Superman specifically is all about is the position that Superman has in the eyes of the world. And you see a lot of that. Like, I mean, he has to go to court. He has to stand up he has to explain what happened in what happened in Africa, or that botched, mission where people died. And it's everyone's distrustful of Superman. It's not like people have embraced him. And then you see when he goes and saves that burning building, and you see all in Mexico, I think, Mexico, and all the people surround him like he is a god,
a messianic figure. Yeah.
And I think that's completely what that movie that has an undercurrent of that throughout the whole thing. And in Batman's case, Batman's like, look, if there's one chance that he could something bad could happen, then we have to protect ourselves. And I think it's playing with those ideas the whole movie. I think that's what the movie's about. And Batman's not wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the cool part about it. All right, next up, and by the way, Javier Ria sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. All right, Kung Fu Hot Dog writes, hey, John, one of two. I was disgusted by that AMC boss who took a $9 million bonus instead of distributing the monies to his furloughed employees. He should take a cue from the late Satoru Iwata, who took a 50% pay cut when the 3DS was in trouble. And then, so the second was a completely different issue. So, look, first of all, he did not take a $9 million bonus. He took a $4 million bonus. Still a huge bonus. Look, it is one of the most ridiculous things I have ever heard, that while the movie theater industry as a whole is hanging on by a thread, when your company lost billions in a year and was struggling to keep the lights on, they gave their boss, who makes $9 million a year, and then reports came out in IndieWire to suggest actually that year he made $20 million, to give him a $4 million bonus for barely keeping the lights on while 30,000 employees are furloughed was disgusting. But, let me say this as well. Everybody in the world is an expert about what other people should do. Everybody is an expert, Rob, about what other people should do. Particularly, everybody on the planet is an expert on what other people should do with their money. And I don't think we should go there. Let's be honest here. I would have been a nice gesture for him to take that $4 million bonus and say, let's create a fund for all the people that we furloughed. Yes, that would have been a great gesture. Do I think he was morally obligated to do that? No. And guess what? 95% of you guys watching the stream wouldn't have done that either. So I'm going to try not to put myself in the place of being an expert on what he should have done with his money, but I will say this. From a business point of view, understanding that the industry as a whole is barely hanging on by a thread, that his own company is struggling to keep the lights on, at the very minimum, what this guy who made $20 million, $20 million bucks, when they came to offer him a $4 million bonus, at the very minimum, it would have been good for business to say, you know what? I am so thankful. I'm going to defer that bonus until we're back up on our feet again. I think just that would have been a really good business thing to do. Say, you know what? If by the end of 2021, we're back up and on our feet again and we're rolling again, then give me my $4 million bonus. But I'm at least going to defer that just for optics. Because, Rob, I've had a lot of AMC employees. Now, of course, I have a connection to AMC theaters. So I've been connected to a lot of employees there for a long time. But I have been emailed by a number of AMC employees. Everything from popcorn counter workers, Rob, to general managers, to facilities people, and none of them have written to me to say, You know what? I felt good about that, John. I felt good that our CEO took a big bonus when all of us are struggling to keep the lights on in our own homes. Not one of them. They were all pissed. All of them were pissed. And I just thought it would have been a nice gesture at least. Again, I don't want to become the expert on what other people should do with their money, but I just thought it would have been good business for optics, for company morale, to at least say, you know what? I defer. My $20 million in my bank will keep me afloat. Don't worry. I'll defer the payment until, anyway, that's just me. And I don't want to go off on this whole thing again. So let's move on to the next one. Kung Fu Hot Dog writes in again. Hey, John, Falcon the Winter Soldier is my new favorite kid on the block. And no, Wanda isn't the most tragic figure in the MCU. It's Bucky Barnes. I just want to hug that guy and tell him everything will be all right. Hail Hydra. You know, Rob, I've heard that debate. I still say Wanda is the more tragic because Bucky Barnes, up until we saw him in Captain America, the First Avenger, he's had a pretty good life. He had a good family, good friends, entered the military. So up until his adult life, he'd had a pretty good life. Wanda's life has been sucksicles ever since she was a child. Like absolutely big licks of sucksicles ever since she was a child with growing up in a war-torn thing where her mother looks out the windows and there's gunfights in the streets and then a bomb blowing up their house. Everything had been sucksicles. But anyway, what do you think? Who's the more tragic figure, Bucky or Wanda? How do you see it?
I look, I think you made a good point about Wanda in that she really did have a terrible life and lost her family. So while Bucky in his adult life, he hasn't really, here's the thing. He was, everything was good until he fell off a train. And then he woke up only when they sent him on missions.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, Bucky, while he suffered trauma, has probably been alive and not in suspended animation for months, maybe in the last 70 years. So he really hasn't been out. He hasn't been suffering for very long at all. I bet even less than a year if you include all the time, even the time he was in Wakanda, he just hasn't had a life. Whereas Wanda's been aware the whole time and all she's had is tragedy, you know? And so I think Wanda has experienced tragedy for a lot longer than Bucky has. So I think Wanda takes that cake.
All right. In our debate about fictitious characters that don't actually exist in the real world. All right. Next up, we got Mr. Graham 91 who writes, not impressed. Kal-El, sweet baby Jesus, was smiling from ear to ear, full of joy. Superman was done justice in this film. Zach understands and appreciates the Superman. Hey, listen, there's no doubt about it. Man of Steel is my all-time favorite Superman movie I've ever. And that moment when he just allows Steppenwolf to hit him with his axe and says, I'm not impressed, was maybe the greatest moment in all of the DCEU. I mean, to say that I was giggling and sweating and maybe tears in my eyes and choking from laughter and wanting to hip hop hooray, hoorah, just seeing that moment was so amazing that now look, I also hear some people saying, oh, well, you know, in the theatrical version, Superman was able to take out, Steppenwolf by himself, but in the Zack Snyder version, it was more of a team effort. There was no team effort needed. As soon as Superman showed up and stood there and just let Steppenwolf give him his best shot with his axe, it was obvious. There's nobody else needs to be here right now. They needed to keep the lights on. The Justice League had to be there to keep the world from ending until Superman could arrive. And then once he arrived, Steppenwolf was no longer an issue. Steppenwolf was not an issue once Superman got there. But they still needed the rest of the team to get the mother box apart. And so that was, then they pulled the whole Galaxy Quest thing and they got it apart and there's all that. But yeah, I mean, that was to me the best moment. Not just of this movie. It was the best moment of all of the DCEU. And I'm still, my heart is still smiling from it, my friend. My heart is still smiling. All right. Next up, SNJ Vash writes, love your show. Thank you so much. I just want to say that the score in the Snyder cut, the Snyder Justice League cut, made the same scenes as the original cut so much better. Like, for example, the fight when they revive Superman. Thanks for your hard work. Rob, there's two different things. There's score, which is the orchestral music that is composed and played, and then there's soundtrack, which are songs choices that they throw in songs.
Source cues.
There you go. I admit I was not big on their song selection in it. I quite often thought they felt very weird and out of place, but they only had a couple of them. It's not a big deal. The score, though, I didn't mind the score in the theatrical version, not at all. I had no problem with the score in the theatrical, especially with the little overtones of the 89 Batman and the little musical cues to John Williams' Superman theme. I thought they did some good things, but I thought the score of this version was significantly better. Because like they said, it drew out the emotions of the scene better than the original one did. And I thought the score, while I'm not a big fan of their soundtrack choices, I thought the score was significantly better. How did you feel about it?
Oh, I completely agree. I'm a fan of Junkie XL, Tom, what is it, Horkenborg. I really enjoyed the score for the film. Sure. Was it overwrought and perhaps was there too much of it? Sure. But I'm like, bring it on. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And anytime, I have to tell you, I never, ever, ever get tired of Wonder Woman's theme.
Love it.
And they didn't really use it in Wonder Woman 84. They had more of an orchestral version of it. I'm like, no, I want Tina Guo, or however you pronounce her last name correctly, just sewing on that electric cello and shredding. I love it so much. I love it.
I've heard some people criticize that they overused it, and maybe I didn't care though. I love that. As soon as those big thumping orchestral drums, boom, 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 boom,
yeah,
yeah. I'm like, I love it.
By the way, I mean, I one of the things that the Snyder Cut gave me was the Wonder Woman I want. I mean, everything she did, including the last beat with Steppenwolf, which I loved. I'm like, you know what? This is what I came to see. None of this namby-pamby Wonder Woman hanging out in a mall. I mean, come on, man. Give me the Wonder Woman. Give me the fierce Amazonian warrior that we need and deserve.
Well, I would contend that we did get a lot of that in the first Wonder Woman, especially with that World War I scene, which was
that's
like,
I love. No, I love Wonder Woman. I love the first Wonder Woman.
84, not so much.
No, that's what I mean. In 84, I'm like, come on. And it was nice to see Wonder Woman unapologetically throwing dudes into walls, like when she rescues, and when the guy's got a machine gun and she's able to fend off machine gun bullets with her speed. I'm like, give me that. That's what I want to see. And I got it.
All right. Let's move on here. Next up, Kai writes, "Hey, John and Co., longtime fan. Thank you so much for being here, Kai. First-time tipper. Not going to lie, I was ruling for GSP. Do you mean rooting for GSP? George St. Pierre to kidnap the general. First episode was not bad. Still not long enough, though. Anyway, keep up the great work." Yeah, that's going to... Rob, I think this is going to continue to be an issue. Now, while this first episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier was definitely longer than maybe any of the WandaVision episodes. I maybe there might have been one that was longer, but it still feels short. Now, granted, at 47 minutes of runtime, technically, it is as long as an hour-long episode of television would be when you take out commercials and all that kind of stuff. So I get it, and I understand, but I also agree. I would like a good, you know what? I just watched, I think it was the first episode of season 3 of the Mayans. I really like Mayans because it's an offshoot of Sons of Anarchy. It's not as good as Sons of Anarchy, but still quite good. And like its first episode, I think was an hour and 5 minutes. And I'm like, that's kind of what I'm looking for here. I think this is probably going to continue to be an issue for a lot of people. What did you notice the runtime? Like when it ended, did you notice it as much as you did with WandaVision?
No, I felt that the first episode was really fulfilling. With WandaVision, I'm like, oh, wait, what? That's it? But I felt it was it was right. Although I did feel the very ending was abrupt. Like, I'm like, wait, what? So.
All right. Well, listen, Rob, I just looked at the time and I realized we kept you overtime here again, but thank you so much for being here today. We'll of course see you again tomorrow. But in the meantime, on this great day of William Shatner's 90th birthday, it's only appropriate that we have you, one of the guys who directed the great William Shatner, here. So in the meantime, Rob, where can people find you and all of your goodness online?
You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram under my name, Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work.
All right, dude. Thanks a lot for being here. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow, my friend. Have a good one.
All right. I'll see you later.
All right, guys, that is the one and the only, the great Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. He'll, of course, be back again tomorrow. But for now, we still got some time. Let's keep going through your questions, shall we? Next up is Mr. 47, who writes, Mechagodzilla about to kill Kong. Incredible Hulk... Incredible Hulk steps in to block the attack and roars, shaking the screen as we lose our shit. Our three heroes meet up to stand together. Godzilla to Kong, he with you, Kong to Godzilla. I thought he was with you. Okay, yeah. Listen, as much as I like Batman versus Superman, I do have to say, and while I like some good cheesy humor here and there, the one line about Batman versus Superman I didn't like was, is she with you? I thought she was with you. Yeah, okay. There's that one. I actually, see, and I defend the Martha scene. I thought that was worse than the Martha scene, because I defend the Martha scene. But, and I did a whole video about why I defend the Martha scene. But anyway, that's the one line to me that I just never got over. Anyway, Jaron Morris writes, I love Last of Us 1 and 2, even got Ellie's tattoo on my right. But as much as I love playing Last of Us 1 and Part 2, and Part 2 is a masterpiece for some reason. I played Part 2 once and I can't again. I don't want to put myself through that. Thoughts. Also, John, I grew to like Abby at the end of Last of Us 2, but I will still never forgive her for what she did, but can kind of understand and cause of that parking lot scene in Last of Us 2, I can never go to a parking lot at night. Hashtag. Okay, so here's the thing. There's always a lot of controversy, I guess, around Last of Us. The Last of Us Part 2 is simply the best narrative storytelling I've ever seen in a video game. I've never seen better. It was, my heart was just ripped into pieces over. It is a story about, there's very few of these stories that do this, but a couple of them do, and when they're done right, they're masterpieces. What pain does to people. What pain can do to a person. What it can change them into. No matter how good of it's like Joker says, we're all just one bad day. And the thing about Abby, with killing Joel, you realize that how many people did Abby and Joel kill in the Last of Us games, right? And we don't think about the fact that every single person they kill may have just been on the wrong side of a dispute or whatever. Maybe they were really good people or whatever, but they all had families and friends and parents and partners and loved ones and maybe children or whatever. And yeah, you go around killing that many people like you do in the Last of Us games. From the other person's, from the family member's point of view, you're the villain. And I love that one thing they did in Last of Us 2, where we got to understand that, yeah, Joel's the hero of the story, but to somebody else, he's the villain of the story. He killed that girl's father. He murdered and took away that girl's, her dad was her life. And he murdered and killed a lot of other people too. Now, from Joel's point of view, we understand his reasoning, we understand what he's doing, but it's always from your perspective. In the words of Obi-Wan Kenobi, it depends on your point of view. And to her, Joel was a monster who murdered her father and murdered a lot of other people. And I love the fact that the juxtaposition of that I thought was bold. I thought it was gutsy. And for me, it worked. And I know for a lot of people, they got their underwear all up in a twist up their pucker hole about it. And that's fine. It's all subjective. We all have our different opinions of it. But I thought, as somebody who's not a huge gamer, especially console stuff, I thought it was absolute breathtaking storytelling. And it won more awards than any other game in history. And to me, it deserved it. Other people have different points of view, and it is what it is. All right, next up. Let's see. Next up is Jaron Morris, who also writes, thank you for everything. It was great watching you perform and going out on top, Habib. Thank you. Even though I would want to see him fight again, I don't want to at the same time, because like the father said after Habib retires, it's now Islam's turn. Hashtag Habib. Of course, in the world of mixed martial arts, the greatest mixed martial art combat sports fighter of all time has just retired. Habib Nurmagomedov, who is nobody was his equal. Nobody was his equal. He was unbeatable. I mean, anybody can beat anybody on any given day if you just happen to land the right lucky shot. Khabib Nurmagomedov was so far and ahead the best pound for pound fighter in the world. No one ever came close. No one ever came close to him. Like no one, like you look at like a John Bones Jones. Well, John Bones Jones lost against Dominic Reyes. He lost that fight. He had been in a number of fights where he won by split decision, whatever. Khabib Nurmagomedov never came close to losing a fight. It was never even within a thought of a possibility. He would go in there and smash people. Now, I wanted to see him come back for one more fight. I really, because he always said he wanted to fight George St. Pierre, who is his favorite martial arts of all time. Yeah, Khabib has said his all-time favorite MMA guy is George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre said the only guy he would come out of retirement to fight again is Khabib. They both respect each other very, very much. I wanted to see that fight. The UFC didn't. And it never came to be. But yeah, man, the Eagle has retired. I can only hope that someday he decides to come out of retirement so we can watch him smash people again. It would be amazing to see. All right, next up. Orange Hand writes, hey, John, if you get a chance post-COVID to attend a World Series game, would you go? Go Jays. Also, I kind of expected the new South Park episode addressing QAnon to put up things that I'm not going to get anything political, stuff like that. As far as World Series goes, yeah, I would go. Listen, I am not a big baseball fan. No surprise there. I'm not a big baseball fan. But the World Series is a cultural event. If I get the opportunity to go to a World Series game, oh, hell yes, I'm going to a World Series game. Absolutely am. You don't have to be a big baseball fan to just know that you're being a part of history. To be in the stadium at a World Series game is being part of history. So absolutely, even though I'm not a big baseball fan, I would absolutely totally be there. Matthew Nuttleman writes, why do they remove Through the Decades on Disney Plus? Let me try that again. Why do they remove Through the Decades on Disney Plus? Matthew, I would love to answer your question, man, but to be honest, I'm not really sure what it is you're asking. I apologize, man, but I don't understand what it is you're asking. Sorry, dude. Tony Rodriguez writes, while Black Bono Lala sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Tony Rodriguez writes, Wanda Spur-Ickies continues. Not sure what that means. Grain of salt time. Evan Peters wasn't. Oh no, please. Can we move past this? Anyway, grain of salt time. Evan Peters wasn't on the making video, the making of documentary of WandaVision, because we aren't done with him. He is the protective custody person. FBI knows who he is. The Bonner name is his alias. That's why he laughed. All hail the foot of Feige. No. No. Bad. No more of WandaVision theories, please. They put them to rest. Let's move on from them, Tony. Please, for the love of God, brother. Let's move on from those. They addressed it. They answered the questions. Bad boy. Naughty. Let's now move on, shall we? Next up, Atreyu writes, have you seen The Little Prince? I have seen The Little Prince. I thought that book was unfilmable, but they did a good job. Also, this is going back a little bit. Also, the themes in that story are extremely deep. I question if kids would understand it. I think there's a number of properties like that where maybe kids wouldn't totally grasp, but some would. What's interesting about stories like that is kids can grow into their understanding of it. And I think that's actually something really special. And when this film dropped, God, it was, pre-pandemic, but it was very well done. I never thought it to be unfilmable, but it was very well done. All right, next up, Mr. 47 writes, as someone who's half Filipino, hey, Ann, the recent attacks on my people is absolutely disgusting and cowardly. # stop the hate. I think I don't like the # stop the hate. I don't like that hashtag. And the reason I don't like the hashtag is because I think it's too generous. It's too generous. Saying stop the hate is too generous. I don't know. Stop being a pathetic fucking asshole. That sounds better to me. Yeah, I like that one. Stop being a pathetic fucking asshole, you bottom dwelling losers. I like that one better. That granted, that's a long hashtag. Hashtag stop being a bottom dwelling fucking asshole loser, you pathetic scums of the earth. It keeps getting longer. But I feel like stop the Asian hate is just too kind and too gentle of a hashtag. It's not a thing. If you engage in this, you are a pathetic, bottom dwelling, nut guzzling, absolute pathetic loser. And history will be better when you are wiped from it. Anyway, that's just kind of my take on it. Okay, let's move on. Next up, Blake writes, saw Snyder's Justice League, really enjoyed it, but either way, I'm glad he got to somewhat finish his story with one director's vision. As a whole, is a pretty strong trilogy with the good Batman vs. Superman, the great Man of Steel. Just bummed it really hyped me for a sequel that we'll never get. Well, I mean, look, yeah, it looks like never going to get anything else. I mean, Warner Brothers already knows the movies they've done with Zack Snyder have disappointed at the box office, never lived up to its potential, were very divisive amongst fans and critics and blah, 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 blah. And right now, Zack Snyder says he has no plans. I mean, you can go look up the quote. He said he has no plans to do any more films. I mean, he says never say never, but he says he has no plans to do any more. Warner Brothers has said this is a cul-de-sac and that they're moving on. But in a world where Jamie Foxx is playing Electro again, you always know in the words of Dumb and Dumber, there's a chance. You're saying there's a chance. It may only be 1 in a million, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. But yes, as of right now, it looks like those things won't happen. All right, next up. That was Blake, I believe. Yes, next up. Disney's Lost Compadre writes, Snyder's Justice League didn't crash HBO as WandaVision did to Disney Plus during its last episodes because the demand was hugely less in the former. Reliable source. I get it. First-class company must have foreseen bad boy Disney, but lessons learned for sure won't happen again. Well, look, some people, I did some reading. There was nowhere near the amount of problems for HBO when Snyder Cut came out as there was for Disney Plus when the WandaVision episodes were coming out. But at the end of the day, to me, this is about Disney Plus. See, HBO has been in this game a long time. And so they make sure their servers and their back-end systems are all prepared to handle a big influx of traffic when you drop a big title. And the bottom line is this, they were more ready for it than Disney was. It's just that simple. HBO's been in the game longer, and they made sure that they were more prepared for the influx of traffic than Disney Plus was. And this shows us that Disney Plus is still relatively new at this, and it's their own fault. When you've got the name Disney in front of you, you have no excuses. You know these shows are going to be popular. You know you're going to get big influxes of traffic. You know you have fans staying up to midnight or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. to watch when these shows drop. It is your responsibility, Disney Plus, to make sure that you have the back-end systems up to date and ready to handle that traffic. You're not some little fly-by-night ISP. You are Disney. Get your shit together. If HBO can do it, you can do it, and there's no excuses. And I still think Disney needs to make sure they get those that fixed and up to date because HBO handled it well and Disney Plus simply did not. Anyway, there's that. Okay, next up. Tony Rodriguez writes, I watched Justice League Friday, and I'd say if the Snyder version is a big book, you have to read for a school book report, and the 2017 version is the Cliff Notes edition. And so, and just got Megaforce on Blu-ray. Megaforce, $21. Oh, it's my favorite too. Had all the Matchbox cards as a kid. Listen, Megaforce is one of those movies to me that I love Megaforce, and I often talk about Megaforce. World's like a wheel. Life is a wheel, man. It all comes around. Ace. I love Megaforce. If you guys haven't seen Megaforce, make sure you check it out. It is bargain basement. It is bargain bin G.I. Joe. That's how to describe Megaforce. But for whatever reason, in all of its glorious cheesiness, I absolutely love it. Make sure you guys check that out. All right, let's keep going here. Next up. James Lockman writes, one of two. In the past, Sam and Bucky were usually kind of in the background, while we got to see the main heroes carrying most of the screen time. But it was refreshing to see Sam and Bucky doing their thing, especially Sam, who got to show more of his abilities and what he can do. I love the part where he uses his wings to form a big shield in front of him. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Just like in Endgame, he used the wings to stab the enemy. Looking forward to seeing more of what they can do and more about their characters. And I think that's the key, James, is that with these guys, it's more about what they can do. It's about what they do with the characters. Like, to me, while I am in awe and amazed by the action sequence, the aerial combat, all that kind of stuff, I loved it. It was great. But the real gems of that first episode was the character work. It was, Bucky in therapy and exploring like what kind of a mess he must be in. It's Sam trying to deal with the real world issues that we never see superheroes really having to deal with, which is part of the reason why I like Superman and Lois so much, with Superman struggling with what does it mean to be a parent and all this kind of stuff. And I find that I'm really appreciating that stuff much, much more. It adds a whole new level and depth to the storytelling, whether it's in a Superman and Lois or a Falcon and Winter Soldier. That's the part that really stood out to me. And, well, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing, in the action sense, all the stuff that Bucky can do, all the stuff that Sam can do. I actually find myself even more excited just about their stories. And I'm really excited to see how their stories turn out. So anyway, that's just kind of me. All right, next up. Benny S. writes, one of two. Well, spank my arse and call me Judith. Just watch the Snyder Cut, and oh my God, if the DCU ever introduces Darkseid, he better look like this one. Same for Martian Manhunter, because in my opinion, this is the definitive version of Justice League. Well, it's the original version, at any rate. WB needs to have a word with themselves for not having faith in Zack's vision. Not all superhero movies have to mirror Marvel's tone, especially DC. Can't explain how hyped this film made me. All I can say is, #Unite the Snyder League Part 2. Here's the problem, Benny. And this is the problem that everybody oversimplifies. When you say WB needs to have a word with themselves for not having faith in Zack's vision, everybody tries to oversimplify this, but here's the reality. Now, again, I think they totally mismanaged the situation. Kevin Tsujihara, who I was a big fan of at one point, totally botched it. He sabotaged this thing for completely selfish reasons and all that kind of stuff. But let us also not oversimplify and forget that the past exists. The fact of the matter is that Warner Brothers did do 2 other Zack Snyder DC movies, and both of them underperformed at the box office, and both of them were incredibly divisive amongst fans and the audience. They both were. That's just a fact. Those are just facts. Now, whether they should be is entirely different. Man of Steel is an all-time classic and should be revered as such, but it didn't. So the reality is Warner Brothers had 2 films of Zack Snyder. Both of them underperformed, and both of them divided the audience. As a matter of fact, here's something that is a very, very inconvenient truth for a lot of people to deal with. The theatrical version, go look this up. Don't take my word for it. Go look it up. The theatrical version of Justice League, with all of its problems, especially now in light of the Snyder Cut, but the theatrical version of Justice League had higher critic ratings and higher audience ratings than Batman vs. Superman did. Think about that. And again, go look it up. The theatrical version of of Justice League had higher critic ratings and higher audience ratings than Batman vs. Superman did. Now, that's not a statement, and that's not a fact that defends the theatrical release of Snyder Cut. What that does, though, is illustrate that Warner Brothers had done 2 movies with Snyder, and for whatever reason, people didn't appreciate Man of Steel for the brilliance that it is, and people didn't appreciate Batman vs. Superman. And the reality is those films underperformed, and they were divisive. So it's easy in a what happened yesterday sort of world to say, oh my God, how could Warner Brothers not move forward with Snyderverse? Well, because they did 2 other films and they didn't get the results they wanted. Now, would I give one of my fingers to see a true Zack Snyder directed Man of Steel 2? Yes, I would. But I understand why Warner Brothers doesn't. Would I give one of my toes to see a Ben Affleck written, directed, and starring in Batman standalone movie with Deathstroke as the villain? Yes, I would. But I understand why Warner Brothers isn't. So, in the midst of all the excitement over one thing, you also got to take a step back and look at the entire picture. And the entire picture is they had done other films with Snyder and they did not get the results that they wanted. And if you want different results, you have to change what you're doing. Now, maybe that's not what I would have done just because I love Man of Steel. So I wanted more of that. But it is what it is. It is what it is. I would have loved it, but I understand why they're not doing it. So anyway, that's just one perspective. That's just one perspective to look at it. But it's, I think, a perspective we need to keep in mind. All right, next up. We've got Dennis Chip Chapman who writes, "Hey, John, I'm convinced Whedon was hired to make Justice League marvelous and less dark. Most of the scenes he shot contained humor or snarky comments like Aquaman sitting on Diana's lasso. I never did like that scene. I mean, it was kind of funny, but I didn't really like that scene. And Batman's something's bleeding comment. Although I will say I really did like the something's bleeding comment. I did. Your thoughts?" No, look, it adds to my confoundment about what went on when they were making this theatrical version. You don't let Joss Whedon actually change anything, like story-wise, like the fundamentals of what the story is. You don't let him change the story. You tell him to cut the movie in half and then to, put in some tonal things that are different. And listen, I admit there are two parts of the theatrical version I wish was still in it. The one is the Batman to Flash scene where he says, "Just save one." I love that moment. I thought that moment was great. I wish it was still in. But I understand why Zach didn't put it in because it's not what he shot. I understand. I'm just saying I found as I was sitting there as a fan wishing to see that scene. I also love the exchange between Batman and Superman when a disoriented Superman is saying, "You won't let me live. You won't let me die." And he says specifically when Batman says the world needs you and Superman says to Batman, "But does the world need you? Does it need you?" I thought those were fabulous lines. Again, I get why Snyder didn't keep them in because they weren't what he shot. So I understand. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the Diana Lasso thing, it just, again, makes me confounded. What did Warner Brothers expect to happen? And this is why I stand by this statement. In a Twitter world that we live in, where everybody has attention spans the size of a titmouse, I once made this big, long, elaborate, and I structured it all where I said, Joss Whedon saved Justice League. But I went at length to explain what I mean by that is that if any other director had been put into the situation where Warner Brothers was saying to them, "We've got this 4-hour movie. We need you to cut it in half. We're not giving you any permission to change anything about the story. Add a few things to make it lighter and funnier without changing anything in the story. Oh, and by the way, we're not giving you any time. You don't get to change the release date. It's staying exactly where it is, and we want you to do all of this with no time." No other, very, very few directors would have been able to step in under those ridiculous circumstances, get that movie done, and get it in theaters to a point where it got higher audience ratings and higher critic ratings than Batman versus Superman. It probably just would have burned on the vine. And so I said, and I still stand by, that Joss Whedon saved that movie. But unfortunately, in today's Twitter-minded, titmouse attention span world, all people remember is me saying Joss Whedon saved Justice League as if I was saying he saved it from Zack Snyder. That's not true at all. But I think, especially now that we've seen Snyder Cut, and we get a better perspective of just how ridiculous that entire situation was when the theatrical version was being done, and how ludicrous the whole idea was. And the very fact that they were able to get a movie done under Warner Brothers' new criteria and out in theaters by its original release date is still actually kind of fascinating to me. Like, that's actually pretty impressive they were able to do it. And it just makes me more and more confounded about what Warner Brothers was thinking at all in the first place. Because as I'm watching Snyder Cut, I'm just like, wait a minute. Like, what the fuck was Warner Brothers doing? What, like, it just confounds me even more, but whatever, it is what it is. Okay. Last question of the day. And then we got to wrap things up here, guys. Last question of the day comes to us from, was that Chip? It was Chip. Whitney P writes, the opening scenes with the Echo the opening scene with the Echo where Cap assures Sam, where Cap assures Sam that the shield doesn't belong to someone else, made me wonder if this shield came from an alternate universe where Sam is the original Cap. No. I think you're personally, I mean, anything's possible, Whitney, but I also think you're overthinking it. I think it was very simple. When Cap handed him the shield and he says, it feels like it belongs to somebody else, and Cap says, it doesn't. That's just Cap saying, it is yours. I'm giving it to you. It's yours. I think trying to get into, maybe it's from a different universe where Sam was actually Captain America. And I think, honestly, I think that's overthinking it. I think it simply is what it appears to be. Cap was giving Sam the shield and him saying, it feels like it belongs to somebody else. Like, this is yours. And Cap saying, it doesn't. Like, it's not mine now. It's now yours. And I think now we may find out, we could find out that I'm wrong. Like, we could get into episode 5 or whatever, and maybe old man Cap shows up and, during my time travels, I came across dimension 6B15004, where I came across Captain America, who was you, Sam, and he gave me the shield to give to this universe's version of you. I mean, I don't know. That's possible. Anything can happen right now in the crazy comic book movie world. But I think the most simple answer is probably what it was. It was simply Cap saying, no, Sam, this is yours. This belongs to you. But who knows? We'll find out, I'm sure. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for this installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you guys so much for being here and making this show a part of your day. Now, listen, there are still more questions to come. We got Steven, Mohammed, Rob Terry, War Doctor 10, and a bunch of others. Do not worry. Kimberly Curran and myself are going to be doing a long companion video a little bit later today, and we will be getting to your questions then. But until then, guys, thank you so much for spending some of your day here with us. We know there's a lot of things you could be doing, and we love that you spent some of your day here with us. Thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett for bringing his glory and goodness to the show. And a special thank you to all of you guys who sent in the live comments and questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as you did it, and all of us involved here at the John Campea Show, thank you guys very, very much for that support. Remember, guys, to do the 4 main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.